Her stepsister poured acid in her food. Imagine a girl who, after years of being mistreated, finally has a chance to prove herself. But her stepsister, driven by jealousy, tries to destroy her dream with a deadly act. What happens next will shock you. Watch till the end to see how karma serves the most unexpected revenge. In the lively city of Mwanda, where food wasn't just for eating, but a path to fame and glory, lived a quiet girl named Zalika. She didn't live in luxury, even though her house was big. It belonged to her stepmother, who treated her like a burden. Her father had passed away years ago, and from that day on, Zalika became the housemaid instead of the daughter. She cleaned floors, washed clothes, and served food to her stepmother and stepsister without complaint. But there was one thing that brought her peace: cooking. In the tiny backyard kitchen, with smoke rising and spices sizzling, Zalika found her joy. Her fingers moved like magic. Even with simple cassava and pepper, she could create meals that made neighbors peek over the fence in wonder. Zalika never complained. She had learned early that no one would listen. Instead, she poured her feelings into her food. Her late grandmother had taught her a special recipe called Nyama Wanda, a rich beef and spice dish that carried the soul of their ancestors. Every time she cooked it, the memory of love and family filled her heart. She didn't dream of fame. All she wanted was a chance to change her life. Then, everything changed. The Mwanda Culinary Academy, the top cooking school in the country, announced a rare scholarship. Only one spot, only one chance, for someone poor, talented, and passionate. The moment Zalika saw the flyer pasted on the street pole, something sparked inside her. She knew she had to try. That night, she stayed up until dawn, preparing her Nyama Wanda. With firewood smoke in her hair and sweat on her brow, she packed the dish in a plastic container and traveled across town. Inside the academy hall, rich children displayed colorful meals on golden plates. Zalika stood in her second-hand sandals, holding her humble container. The judges hesitated, but one agreed to taste. Then the second, then the third. Silence fell. Eyes widened. One judge put down his fork and said, "This is unforgettable." Out of hundreds, Zalika's dish was chosen. She had won. Her name was called. Her photo was taken. Her story made it to the evening news. A poor girl from the slums with nothing but talent and her grandmother's wisdom had earned a place among the elite. She was going to Mwanda Culinary Academy, but as Zalika packed her small bag to start her new journey, her stepsister Tando's eyes burned with rage. She was already a student at the academy, used to being the best, the star. She couldn't believe her so-called maid sister was coming to share her space. Zalika had won a golden ticket, but she was walking into fire. Zalika stepped through the grand gates of the Mwanda Culinary Academy, with her heart pounding and a small bag in her hand. Her shoes didn't fit. They were borrowed from the neighbor's daughter, but her spirit was strong. She had earned this place. As she walked through the corridors lined with polished tiles and shining glass, whispers followed her like a shadow. Some stared in surprise, others in confusion. But one voice cut through the air like a knife. "Who let the housemaid in here?" Tando's voice rang out, dripping with disgust. Her laughter echoed behind it. Zalika froze. She turned and saw her stepsister standing among a group of rich students, wearing a white chef coat with her name stitched in gold. Tando looked perfect, with flawless makeup and shiny shoes. She raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms, waiting for Zalika to shrink. But Zalika didn't. She held her head high, even as the others laughed along with Tando. Inside, she was shaking. But outside, she walked past them like she didn't hear a thing. Tando had always treated her like dirt at home. But here, this was her kingdom. She was the top student at Mwanda. She had awards on the wall and teachers who praised her. Now, that same spotlight was being shared with the girl she once called a nobody, and she hated it. In the kitchen, where students were paired for training, Zalika was placed in Tando's group. The air turned cold. Tando rolled her eyes every time Zalika touched a pan. She mocked the way Zalika held her knife, snickered when her hands shook, and made sure the others ignored her. When the instructor turned his back, Tando would whisper, "This isn't your backyard kitchen, bush girl." Zalika stayed silent. She focused on her food. She didn't have fancy tools or years of training, but she had heart. She sliced, stirred, and plated with a quiet power that started turning heads. Some students began to notice. Even one teacher nodded quietly after tasting her sauce. That made Tando even angrier. One night, Tando followed Zalika to the storage room. She cornered her near the spice shelf and hissed, "Stay in your place, Zalika. This academy wasn't built for girls like you." Zalika looked her in the eye and replied softly, "Then I'll be the first." That night, Tando realized something terrifying. Zalika wasn't here to take scraps. She was here to win. From the moment Zalika stepped into the academy kitchen, Tando turned it into a battlefield. Every day became a new challenge, not from the cooking itself, but from Tando's cruel games. She was determined to break Zalika's spirit. She started small, bumping into her by accident so hot oil would spill on her arm, hiding her ingredients minutes before a dish was due, and smearing her clean apron with sauce behind her back. Zalika said nothing. She'd quietly wipe it off and keep going, but it didn't stop there. One afternoon, just as Zalika was about to start preparing her dish for the week's evaluation, she noticed her salt tasted off. She dipped a finger and froze. It was sugar. The whole container had been switched. She didn't panic. She quickly adjusted her recipe and worked with what was available. That day, her dish still got high praise from the instructor. Tando was furious, so she escalated. During a lunch break, while everyone was out, Tando snuck into the kitchen and poured bleach into Zalika's water jug. It was meant to make her sick, or worse. But fate was on Zalika's side. One of the assistant chefs came early, saw the jug open and the strange smell, and raised the alarm. The incident was blamed on a cleaning mix-up, and nothing was traced back to Tando. Zalika knew. She looked straight at Tando during the next session, her expression calm, but her eyes burning. She didn't speak, she didn't accuse. She just kept cooking. That silence bothered Tando more than words. She wanted Zalika to scream, to fight, to quit. But Zalika didn't. Every day she showed up with her chin high, her tools clean, and her focus sharper than ever. She practiced late into the night, even when her hands were blistered and her back ached. She helped other students when they struggled, even those who once laughed at her. Slowly, the same students began to see the difference between the spoiled top student and the quiet girl who fought battles alone. Zalika's dishes began to shine. Her flavors were bold, fresh, different. Even teachers began calling her out for praise in front of the class. Still, she never smiled too wide. She knew peace was a luxury she hadn't earned yet. Tando watched all of it, seething. Her every plan had failed. Zalika hadn't cracked, hadn't cried, hadn't run. She was still there, stronger, smarter, and more admired than before. And worst of all, she was winning. The midterm contest was the biggest event of the term. It was where reputations were made or destroyed. Every student had to invent something original, a dish that had never been seen or tasted before. Zalika knew this was her chance. While others rushed to try complicated techniques and exotic ingredients, she went back to her roots. She thought about her grandmother's cooking, the bold flavors of home, and the way food could tell a story. She stayed late every night in the practice kitchen, long after the others had left. With her small notebook and aching feet, she tested and adjusted every detail. She mixed spices that most students ignored, grilled sweet fire fruit over charcoal, and paired it with tender chicken marinated in a spicy herb blend. The flavors clashed, then melted into harmony. She named it Fire Fruit Fusion. On contest day, the kitchen buzzed with noise. Tando wore a designer apron and rolled her eyes when she saw Zalika walk in with a reused one. But Zalika didn't look at her. She had only one goal: get her dish on the plate, hot and perfect. Time ticked, sweat dripped, knives sliced, pans sizzled. When the final bell rang, the plates were lined up. Zalika's dish looked simple. Nothing flashy, no gold flakes, no tall stacks. Just grilled fruit glowing with heat, golden brown chicken, and a deep red sauce that shimmered under the lights. The judges walked in. All eyes followed Chef Dumo, the Academy's most respected chef. Known for his harsh critiques and high standards, his word could launch careers or end them. He took a bite of Tando's dish first. He nodded politely, then moved on. When he reached Zalika's plate, the room went quiet. He picked up his fork, cut into the chicken, and placed a bite into his mouth. Then he stopped. His eyes lifted. He chewed slowly, then looked down again, scooped a bit more of the sauce with the fruit, and ate again. Everyone held their breath. Then he said just one sentence. "This tastes like triumph." Gasps echoed through the room. Even the teachers looked surprised. Tando's mouth fell open. No one had ever heard Chef Dumo use that word before. Suddenly, everyone was whispering, Who was she? Where did this flavor come from? Was she the scholarship girl? How did a maid's daughter cook like this? Zalika stood still, heart pounding, but her face calm. She knew she had just opened a new door. Her name was no longer just on the list. It was being spoken with respect. That night, the academy halls were quiet. Most students had gone to bed, tired from the intense contest day, but Tando couldn't sleep. Her mind was spinning with anger. For the first time, her spotlight had dimmed. Everyone was talking about Zalika. Zalika, the girl she called a housemaid, the one who cooked with worn-out tools, but somehow captured the judges' hearts. Chef Dumo's words echoed in her ears. This tastes like triumph. She couldn't take it anymore. Wearing soft slippers and a black hoodie, Tando crept down the hallway, glancing around to make sure no one saw her. She entered the academy's main kitchen, which was locked at night. Except Tando had a spare key she stole months ago for her extra practice sessions. The room smelled of spices and metal. The contest dishes were stored in labeled containers for press photos and academy records. Tando scanned the shelves until she found it. Fire fruit fusion. Zalika. The container was sealed tight, still fresh. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small vial. It was dark brown, almost black. Acid, not the kind used for cleaning floors. This one was meant for industrial machines. Just one drop could melt a spoon. She had taken it from the maintenance room weeks ago. She never thought she'd use it, but now she knew exactly what to do. Tando whispered, "Let's see them taste that," her voice low and sharp like a knife. She unscrewed the vial and carefully poured the contents into the stew. The deep red sauce hissed faintly as the liquid hit it. It bubbled slightly, then settled. To anyone looking, it would still look perfect, but one bite would destroy a mouth, maybe worse. She resealed the container and placed it back exactly how she found it. As she turned to leave, her heart pounded, not with fear, but with twisted satisfaction. No one saw her. No one would ever know. To her, it was done. The dish would be ruined, and so would Zalika. She walked back to her room with a smile on her face, convinced her throne at the top of the academy would be safe once again. The next morning, the academy buzzed with excitement. It was finals day, and the top 5 dishes would be tasted by celebrity chefs and media guests. Students wore clean aprons, fixing final garnishes and wiping sweat from their brows. Zalika stood quietly at the edge of her station, clutching her backup bowl of fire fruit fusion, unaware of what had happened in the night. Tando strutted in late, acting like nothing mattered. Her dish, a creamy fish stew called golden mamba, was kept on the center table along with the others. But as she turned to pick it up, disaster struck. A clumsy student bumped the table. Tando's bowl slipped, hit the floor, and shattered into a sticky mess of sauce and shame. Gasps filled the room. She panicked. There was no time to cook again. The judges were moments away from entering. In desperation, she scanned the table and grabbed the closest covered bowl, assuming it was her backup. It wasn't. It was Zalika's poisoned fire fruit fusion, the one she had tampered with the night before. Unaware, she straightened her apron and walked confidently to the judges' table. "This is my signature dish," she said with a smug smile, placing it before them. Chef Dumo raised his spoon, swirled it in the sauce, and took a bite. Another chef followed, then another. Tando watched, her fake smile beginning to waver. Then suddenly, Dumo's face twisted. He dropped the spoon. The second judge clutched his throat. The third spat violently into a napkin. And then it happened. Tando screamed. Her lips burned. Her tongue felt like fire. She collapsed to the ground, grabbing her mouth as her skin began to blister. Chaos exploded in the room. Students rushed back. Staff called for help. Zalika stood frozen, staring at the scene. She hadn't served yet. Her real dish was still on her station. She realized what must have happened. Tando had served her poisoned dish, the one she herself had tampered with. Now it was all unraveling. At the hospital, chaos surrounded Tando's bed. Her lips were swollen, her tongue severely burned, and her throat was blistered. She couldn't speak, only groan in pain, as doctors worked to stabilize her. The judges who had tasted the dish were treated immediately for minor burns. Thankfully, none of them swallowed enough to suffer long-term damage, but they were shaken. The academy was in shock. Chef Dumo, furious and confused, demanded answers. The entire kitchen was shut down, and a full investigation began that same day. Every student was called in, one by one. Zalika sat in silence during her questioning, confused and heartbroken. She knew that wasn't her fault, but how had her dish become a weapon? Then came the breakthrough. The academy's head of security arrived with footage from the surveillance cameras inside the main kitchen. Everyone gathered in the main hall. The screen flickered, and the truth played out for all to see. There, under the dim night lights, was Tando, clearly visible, sneaking into the kitchen long after hours. She crept to a shelf, pulled out a covered bowl, and uncapped a small silver vial. Then she leaned over and poured its contents slowly into the food. Gasps echoed through the hall. Zalika's eyes widened. That was her dish, and that was her stepsister, destroying it. But the final blow came next. Security staff revealed what they found in Tando's apron after the incident. The same silver vial, still wet, labeled with a warning sign. Industrial cleaning acid. Avoid contact. The entire room fell silent. Chef Dumo clenched his fists. One of the judges shook his head in disbelief. Tando, the star student, the pride of the academy, had tried to poison her own stepsister, and she had eaten the very dish she tried to ruin. Her own plan had backfired in the worst possible way. Zalika felt tears rising, not from revenge, but from the weight of it all, the pain, the humiliation, the years of cruelty, and now the truth was out. She hadn't even had to say a word. Karma had spoken for her. The interrogation room was cold, the air heavy with tension. Tando sat there, eyes swollen and bloodshot, trembling as the academy's head chef, Chef Dumo, stood before her. The evidence was irrefutable. The footage, the acid vial in her apron, the dish, it all pointed back to her. Tando's head hung low, her once confident demeanor shattered. For a long moment, she said nothing, her chest rising and falling with each shaky breath. The room was quiet, except for the sound of her tears falling onto the table. Finally, the head of the academy, an imposing figure with years of culinary experience, spoke up. Tando, this isn't just about a dish. You've put lives at risk. Do you have any explanation? Tando's lips quivered. I don't know what came over me. Zalika, she was always so perfect, so much better than me. I hated that she always won. She didn't deserve the success she was getting. I thought if I could ruin her dish, ruin her moment, it would finally be my turn. But I didn't think it would go like this. She paused, her voice breaking. I couldn't stand it. She was always so kind, always working hard, while I was always in the spotlight. I wanted to be the one on top. I wanted to be the one everyone noticed. The academy's head of staff, a stern and unforgiving woman, crossed her arms, her face unreadable. And so, you tried to poison your own stepsister? Do you know what could have happened? You could have killed her. How could you do that? Tando's shoulders shook, and in that moment, all the bravado, all the arrogance that had defined her for so long, dissolved. I don't know. I was just so angry, so jealous. It was stupid. I never meant for it to go this far. Chef Dumo shook his head, his disappointment evident. Your jealousy and greed have destroyed not only your career, but any chance of redemption in this academy. What you did is unforgivable. The room grew even quieter. Tando's future had crumbled in an instant, and there was no undoing it. The head of the academy looked Tando straight in the eye. Your culinary career ends here, Tando. You are expelled from the Mwanda Culinary Academy. You will never set foot in these kitchens again. Her world shattered in that moment. Tando was done. Zalika stood outside the room, her heart racing. She had been through so much. She had endured the constant humiliation, the sabotage, and the cruelty. But this was more than she had ever imagined. The truth was out. Tando had been exposed for the monster she was. For a long while, Zalika stood there, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. This was her victory, not just in the competition, but in life. It wasn't about the scholarship, the prize, or the recognition. It was about proving that kindness, resilience, and hard work would always rise above envy and hatred. Tando, broken and defeated, was left to face the consequences of her own actions, while Zalika stood strong, knowing that her journey was only just beginning. The news of Tando's disgrace spread like wildfire across Mwanda. Within hours, her face was plastered across gossip blogs, tabloids, and news outlets. Headlines screamed, "Top culinary student exposed for poisoning stepmother." The city was in shock, and the public couldn't get enough of the scandal. Tando had once been the darling of Mwanda's culinary scene, a spoiled, arrogant young woman whose name everyone knew. But now, she was a pariah. Her family, the very people who had once praised her every move, quickly distanced themselves from her. The shame was too much for them to bear. Tando's father, once a respected businessman in the city, publicly declared that she was no longer welcome in their home. Her mother, who had always doted on her, refused to take her calls. Even her younger siblings were told to avoid her at all costs. Tando was alone. Meanwhile, every culinary institution in Mwanda was quick to cut ties with her. No prestigious chef or restaurant would risk their reputation by hiring someone so tainted. The doors that had once opened to her with ease slammed shut. Tando had lost everything: her future, her family, and her dignity. Months passed, and the once celebrated Tando became a distant memory for most. But one day, someone spotted her outside a small bakery in the heart of the city. She was unrecognizable. Her once perfect hair was unkempt, her clothes ragged, and her face hollow from the hardships she had endured. She was kneeling on the sidewalk, begging for spare change, a far cry from the confident, spoiled young woman who had mocked others for their misfortunes. The person who saw her couldn't believe their eyes. Tando, the proud culinary genius who had once mocked the people who worked in places like this, was now begging for a piece of bread. The bakery owner, who had known her from her earlier days as a frequent customer, turned away in disgust. Tando had become a shadow of her former self. The life she had once taken for granted was gone. The very thing she had tried to destroy, Zalika's career, had flourished. Zalika had become a household name, the shining star of the Mwanda Culinary Academy. She was praised for her talent, her resilience, and her kindness. Every day, Zalika's fame grew, while Tando's name became synonymous with shame. Tando's karma was harsh, but deserved. Her jealousy, her envy, and her attempts to destroy someone else's future had come back to her in a way she could never have imagined. And as she sat outside that bakery, begging for scraps, she realized too late that her cruelty had cost her everything. Karma had served her the perfect recipe, one of humiliation, regret, and isolation. Zalika's rise from the shadows was nothing short of remarkable. Despite the bitterness and jealousy that had tried to poison her dreams, she emerged victorious, stronger than ever. She graduated at the top of her class, a proud moment that no one, not even Tando, could take away from her. Her journey from the girl who was once mocked and mistreated to the shining star of the culinary world was complete. Her success didn't go unnoticed. Chef Dumo, one of the most respected names in the culinary world, saw potential in Zalika. He wasn't just a mentor, he believed in her talent and passion. He personally invested in her first restaurant, Zalika's Flame. It was a dream come true. The restaurant quickly became the hottest spot in town, with long lines wrapping around the block, eager customers waiting for a taste of her signature dish, firefruit fusion. Zalika's dish was legendary, a perfect blend of spices and fruit, with a hint of sweetness and a kick of heat that left a lasting impression. Every bite told the story of her resilience, her determination, and her unique approach to life. Customers came from all over to experience the magic of her cooking, and with each plate she served, Zalika proved that the real recipe for success was not in revenge or bitterness, but in passion, creativity, and grace. When reporters and fans asked her about her past, about the trials she faced, Zalika always gave the same answer with a warm smile. Bitterness ruins the taste. I choose spice and grace, she would say, leaving them inspired by her wisdom. Zalika had learned early on that while jealousy might try to cook up wicked plans, it was grace, kindness, and a positive spirit that would always prevail in the end. She had been tested, pushed to her limits, but she chose to rise above it all. The Mwanda Culinary Academy, once the site of her struggle, now celebrated her as one of its finest graduates. She had become a beacon of hope for every underdog, showing that no matter how harsh the world may seem, your talent and integrity will always win in the end. Zalika's story wasn't just about cooking, it was about resilience. It was about how, even in the face of betrayal, you can choose to rise, create, and succeed without losing your soul in the process. As she stood in her restaurant, watching the lines outside grow longer every day, Zalika knew she had achieved what she had set out to do, not just to be the best, but to be the best version of herself. The bitterness of the past had no place in her future, and the spice of life was exactly what she had found. What Zalika's story teaches us is simple yet powerful. No matter how hard life may seem, no matter how much bitterness and jealousy others throw at you, you have the power to rise above it. The journey to success isn't just about talent. It's about choosing grace over resentment, resilience over revenge. Zalika didn't let the hate break her. She turned her pain into passion and her hard work into triumph. If you've ever felt like the world was against you, or if you've been pushed down by the cruelty of others, let Zalika's story remind you that your time to shine will come. Stay focused, stay kind, and always believe in your own strength. Because in the end, it's not the jealousy of others that defines you. It's the choices you make and the grace you carry. If you found inspiration in Zalika's journey, if her story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, because stories like this are meant to spread hope and light. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We have many more stories of strength, resilience, and triumph coming your way. Thank you for watching and supporting us. Your presence here means the world, and we hope to continue bringing you stories that inspire and uplift. Keep shining and never stop believing in your own power.